What is up, guys? Today's video is a combined effort to match up with my main tank guide video. I'm going to be explaining the basics with some more advanced tips while citing back from my previous videos. The flex tanks in Overwatch include Diva, Zarya, Roadhog, Wrecking Ball, and Sigma. Each of these heroes are unique in how they're played, but the ideology to these heroes are very similar. Also, by the way, a lot of people who watch me aren't subbed, so please sub and like the video if you like. Also, if you want to come hang out and ask some questions, then stop by my stream. The link is in the description. I also have an Instagram where I occasionally post useful tips and tricks to improve. If you're liking what you're hearing, stay tuned. Also, make sure to check out my quick guide series playlist to learn a lot more about these tanks. First off, I'll start by going over the basic philosophy of flex tank, and then I'll dive in deeper into each individual tank. The basic philosophy of flex tank is the same as flex support, which means you're acting as an extension of your main tank or your main support. You spend most of your time scouting flankers, taking off angles, ultimate tracking, communicating the status of your teams and the enemy's cooldown, and adding in damage in the way of your main tank to make their jobs easier. Your communication with your fellow tank is super important. Also, keep your callouts simple to limit the audio clutter. For example, if you're Zarya, you should tell your REINHARDT when you want to use your bubble on him to gain charge. Now, I want to get into individual philosophies of each flex tank. First, let's start with Diva. Ideally, you'd want to match up with the Winston. A REINHARDT and a Roadhog and Hammond aren't bad subs either. While playing Diva, you need to alternate between high ground and off angles. While doing so, make sure you check the safety of your most vulnerable teammates. This may vary, so an example I can give is protecting your McCree against the flanking Genji. Basically, be on the lookout for opportunities to peel for your team. Defense matrix is the most important part of Diva. To keep it short and simple, use defense matrix more for others than yourself. If you use matrix more for yourself, the value you bring drastically decreases. What you should be doing is playing a semi-passive playstyle to where you're able to eat incoming projectiles such as Chaotic Nade and Flashbang. The final verdict here is that Diva is a highly mobile flex tank that does well in peeling for the most vulnerable teammates. The next tank I'm going to discuss is Zarya. Zarya is a hybrid flex tank that thrives on high raw damage and life-saving opportunities. Ideally, you'd want a REINHARDT as your main tank. Roadhog and Winston aren't bad subs. Zarya's barriers are an integral part of her kit. You can use them to charge up your damage, output, or block all damage from yourself or your teammates. The philosophy of Zarya is that you need to keep your damage output high and apply large amounts of frontal damage while staying close enough to your teammates to bubble them if needed. Bubbling your main tank and bubbling targeted teammates are basic ways of acquiring energy. A quick side tip is that Zarya's bubble can block ultimates like Earth Shatter and Self-Destruct. With that tip in mind, it shows how much value a bubble itself has. When dealing damage to Zarya, you want to separate the roles of her firing styles. Zarya can either deal damage continuously from her beam, or she can deal burst damage from her energy bombs. When using the beam, prioritize shields, large HP targets, and characters with highly mobile movement abilities like Pharah and Genji, for example. Now, the way you should be positioning yourself is right up next to your fellow tank, but also in range to deal damage with nearby flankers, or you shouldn't be flanking for the most part. The final verdict here is that Zarya is a close range brawler tank with life-saving capabilities and high damage output. Moving on to the third tank, and that tank is Roadhog. Now Roadhog is a unique flex tank in where you don't necessarily need to be playing alongside your team at all times to gain value. Honestly, Roadhog meshes well with any tank that you can think of besides Winston. Roadhog's abilities, for the most part, benefit himself the most. Arguably, his chain hook does have life-saving potential, but that only applies to flankers usually. When playing Roadhog, you are allowed to flank if you time them correctly. Also, off angles in close quarter areas are your best friend. Roadhog's raw damage magnifies flanking opportunities to result in instant picks in the blink of an eye. Roadhog has two playstyles, Solo Queue Hog and Two-Player Hog. Solo Queue Hog consists of constant flanking in solo plays by trying to achieve one-shot kills. Team Player Hog is similar to how Zarya is to be played by saving your hook for incoming threats on your vulnerable teammates. A small note for Hog is to spam shields as much as possible because Roadhog's gun produces many pellets to be able to burst down anything. The final verdict here is that Roadhog is a broad DPS tank hybrid that thrives off of coordinated surface flank plays and great shield spam. Next up, we have Wrecking Ball or Hammond. Another name for Hammond is Ball. Hammond is a hybrid flex tank that acts as two roles, main and off tank. Hammond's playstyle / philosophy is an extreme version of Roadhog's, in that playstyle is consistent flanking at all times. Hammond is a pure solo queue tank, in where you are roaming around the map at all times and waiting to set up perfect flanks for picks. The most important ability of Hammond is not his grappling hook or his power driver, but his ability to knock around multiple enemies at once. Hammond is great at disrupting enemies and baiting out multiple cooldowns, which allows massive amounts of space to be created. When playing Hammond, you need to scout out which enemy or enemies you can easily exploit on your own. Obviously, if you're able to, you should coordinate with your team on focusing targets. Once again, disruption is Hammond's most valuable trait, and you need to realize in each game what the enemy team is winning with and focusing on stopping that. It could be the heroes they're playing, the strats they're pulling off, etc. Hammond has the potential to appeal for teammates, and an example of that is booping an enemy Roadhog while he's hooking someone to screw him up. Now, his ultimate, for the most part, is amazing at zoning off large areas and rooms. In simple terms, his ultimate does well at stopping aggressive pushes from the enemy team. The final verdict here is that Hammond is king at disrupting enemies, and you should focus on increasing your value in that area. Now, the final tank is Sigma. Sigma is a hybrid flex tank like Zarya and Wrecking Ball, with massive amounts of high damage potential and anti-flanker capabilities. The two roles that Sigma can fill are main and flex tank. The best tanks to match up are REINHARDT, Orisa, and Roadhog. Sigma's abilities are nullifiers of damage. They're a mixture of damage blocking and CC. Now, the philosophy of Sigma is to keep your distance to deal poke damage safely and to watch for flankers. You also need to control spaces, preferably small enclosed areas. The most important ability is Accretion. Accretion is a high value CC ability that's able to stun any hero and potentially stop certain ultimates. It's great against squishy flanker DPSs like Genji and Tracer. Sigma's primary weapon, Hyperspheres, offer great shield spam and frontal pressure. So if the main tank gets confident, you need to spam the Hyperspheres into them to injure them quickly. Once again, you need to keep your distance because all of your abilities have more value at a distance for the most part, especially Kinetic Grasp because it'll be easier to catch high value abilities. The final verdict here is that Sigma is a high damage flex tank that thrives off of consistent spam and high damage pressure. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss any new videos. Don't forget to stop by my stream also. The link is in the description. Stay grinding, don't give up, and take care.